To another episode with Charles DeLaTorre and Ashley Boeckholt of what do we call this now, Charles? Cutting Edge? Does that still sound pretty cool?
Yeah, it sounds good.
Right on, right on. So I'm set up here in Bend, Oregon, with the deer and everything walking by my house. Charles and I, what time? You got an early start on it this morning, Charles. I called you early, and you were already freaking had half the day under your belt.
Well, it's you got to this. I mean, it seems like the hustle is unrelentless.
It is.
I don't know.
It,
It hasn't stopped, hasn't slowed down. No rest for the weary.
no, it's crazy. So if we were talking this morning about what we wanted to talk about on this, and you and I ended up talking for a half an hour about all the stuff that we wanted to cover on this. So again, Ashley Buckle from Materials Exchange, Charles from Industrial Forest Products. Hey, look at we're going to start getting back normalized on this, but it's been a crazy market, Charles, and you and I were talking about it. I think you know the word the acronym, is that correct, that kept resonating with you and me talking this morning? As much as I hate saying it, is FOMO, right? So everybody, hey, Justin Smith, what's up, brother? Yeah, nice little work vacation in Bend for sure. The thing that kept coming up is FOMO. Everybody was saying we're not going to have the same amount of inventory we had last year in May, and this isn't going to happen. And I think there's plenty of lumber out there right now. It's just, where is it at in the pipeline? People let stuff run thin, and we're at the same time of the year uh, where this happened last year, right? And kind of off to the races. And you had a great point about transfer of risk, right? So maybe let's talk a little bit about that. What's your thought on that at this point in the market?
Well, I think anybody that has been in the lumber business for the past few years, and I hate to say that because I think that is a common undertone of a lot of conversations as it pertains to lumber and panels. But anybody that's had any experience of what's happened as far as the rise and fall of Rome a couple times in the past 24 months, you know, in our position, it's never good to have overpriced inventory. Really, nobody, unless they're back to back in it or what have you. But the transfer of risk is a big deal, and it's a concept that we look at from a simplicity standpoint of how do we take advantage of a market and its inefficiencies, and how do we multiply that by transferring risk from ourselves to somebody else, where that risk is no longer a negative thing for us. And it works out pretty well, but you got to be really calculated in it and understanding you may miss out on some of that upside because you are conservative. But once again, June, July of this year, I should say, taught a lot of people a lot of lessons.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think you and I were talking. I had a conversation with a big multifamily, actually um, the developer, not even the person that buys lumber, over the weekend, right? And it's funny. I had the same conversation with the same person in May of last year. So all of a sudden, you're back to this thing where all these people that never get in the flow of buying lumber all of a sudden see it again, right? Because their contractor or their framer called them and said, hey, that budget that you had set for X amount of $1 million just went up 40% because of lumber. And all of a sudden, they're like, whoa, we got to start putting stuff on the ground now and buying our own lumber, right? So we're going through that whole cycle again, and it creates this whole fear of missing out, and everybody wants to buy stuff and do stuff, right? So I think if we talk about a month and a half ago, we were literally coming off a little bit until Canada made the announcement they weren't going to cut any more lumber ever, right? Or BC did. Basically, the headline: "We will never cut any more lumber."
Yeah.
Uh, so all of a sudden, um, somebody just asked a question here. We'll get back to it. And then all of a sudden, you had the flooding right at the same time, literally almost the same week that we started that move in 2020. So everybody, Matt Beamer always uses that. I don't know if it's Freudian or whatever, that recency bias he talks about. We're all afraid of what just happened to us the other day, right? Um, Sometimes we don't even look at if things are different. And my gosh, they may not be different. But all of a sudden, we're off to the races again, and the extent, the
Severity.
magnitude, the severity magnitude of this move is like, it's like an F-16 taking off at a frickin' a Blue Angels event, right? It's just straight up with afterburners on at this point, and everybody's just buying whatever they can. You could see it last week. So what could change this? Here's a couple things people throw out. Um, what caused the market to go so high, when I say so high, to 1,800 on a type of CME based in May of last year, was people bought more inventory than they were ever going to consume in their normal time frames, right? And then it took them the rest of the year to get rid of it. So a lot of them keep saying to me a week or two ago, "We're not going to put ourselves in that position again." I don't know if I believe that or not, right? Um, Secondly, we haven't really had a winter across this country yet. Um, for the most part. But maybe that's not it doesn't affect things as much. So we've got a winter that's going to come in, and thirdly, we're going to go into a holiday that kind of takes everybody out of the market for 3 or 4 days for a long weekend, and everybody comes back, and sometimes that can mentally shift people's point of view. But there's also the positive of maybe some things are opening up as far as some of the other type of things. Although I heard that eye joists are still really hard to buy. Uh, None of the things that we thought would resolve themselves have yet. Transportation, I don't have to tell you, is insane.
Yep.
Prompt loads, there's no such thing as a prompt load. If you have something prompt on the ground, it can be 2 to 3 weeks to get a truck underneath it
Yep.
if they show up. So I see both sides of it. What's your feeling on that?
Well, I think, you know, we've all touched on this. The other ancillary items that are necessary for us to continue with the market demanding such high levels of fiber. Those things have not solved themselves. I think, once again, this time last year when it kind of took off, like not the severity it has this time, but it was a gentle rise. There was opportunity for people to actually receive inventory and sell it.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas now that's not the case. I mean, they're buying huge premiums for January delivery just to have the fiber. So it makes you wonder, at what point does a buyer or an end user look at what's on the come, what's sitting on the ground, and say, hold on, wait, this is irrational. I don't have bathtubs or electrical boxes or, anything simple that could bottleneck any one of their processes. Those are still really, really prevalent makers of the market. And I think, once again, you've got emotions. Emotions are a big, big thing, considering what everybody went through. And what's going to stop it? I think it's one big guy saying, hold on, wait, this is getting out of control.
Yeah,
You
no,
stay
that's a
out of
good
the
point.
market.
That's a good point. So Mohammed was asking, is the price hike currently just an emergency, or do you think it may extend to the next month, and why? Well, first let's bring up where we came from. Uh, I mean, I don't know how people qualify an emergency. I never like to say anything's an emergency, but we've already moved 2x on most items. Does that sound except for panels, right? Lumber has
Or
moved.
even two before Southern Yellow Pine. Two before Southern Yellow Pine was the most solid item in the market for the past 45, 60 days.
Yeah, yeah, most, and that stayed up there, and that could really be one of the reasons you always say that too, is that because the outtake at the truss facilities was just flat out, right?
Yep.
But let's size this up a little bit. 2x4, 104 and 5/8, the bread and butter item used in most multifamily, traded a low price of, we'll spitball around here, $500 to $600 a thousand, delivered to most locations on a car. That's $3 and change on a per piece price a month and a half ago. It traded there. 2 or 3 weeks, or currently right now, that is like $1,000 a thousand. That's $6. So the price doubled on that item and is out in order file and is still moving. Right, 2x6, 104 and 5/8 probably are even untouchable. That's your game, Charles. Let's talk about the 9 foot multifamily market, and maybe that'll help Muhammad understand where we're at. So we're trending up, and markets continue to trend until they turn around. And right now, it's got a tailwind.
It definitely has a tailwind, but the severity is what scares me. And I think there's some people that sit on our side of the table that may look at it the same way I do.
Yeah.
Anything that we have in inventory, we transfer the risk. Anything that we own, we try to transfer the risk, because at some point when you take, just like you mentioned, a $3 stick and you turn it into a $6 stick in less than 6 weeks, what happens? You got a bunch of guys with $6 pieces of wood sitting in a yard somewhere trying to replace it with $3.50 wood. So it makes it really difficult, or they're competing against $3.50 wood, so they can't move their $6 wood. So it's a real delicate balance right now. as
Right.
to where your risk adjusted returns are and how much are you willing to miss out on. Because emotionally, think about it, emotionally, everybody wants to maximize a dollar. But if you have to transfer risk at say here, when you know you could wait 3 days and get here, that's an emotionally driven decision. So how do we take that out of it? How do we remove the personal touch of it? Look at it
Right.
as a true commodity and understand that price movement and fluctuation, one way or the other, is going to be extreme now and for the foreseeable future. Over the next 12 months, it's going to be, I mean, it's going to be the Wild West for sure.
So it's interesting. Also, back to Muhammad's question, I never know who I'm delivering this message to because everybody has their own reasons and motivations for what they do. If you're a retail lumber buyer, your first and your foremost job is to not run out of lumber. Period.
Yep.
You can't run out of lumber. Yeah, you may spec a little bit here or there, but you need lumber in your yard. And because most of these big yards are just doing 30-day pricing, they can pass a lot of that on if they're not doing 90-day pricing anymore, right? So their first and foremost job is to not run out. If you're a big multifamily builder,
Shall I point?
yeah,
But
go
hold
ahead.
on though. Here's an interesting point when you start talking about those yards that are of decent size, right? If they put in 30-day price locks, the wood that they're getting in their yard over the next 3 weeks is going to be sold based on pricing from the end of November.
No, that's
So
true.
that
It's a trailing.
automatically,
It's a
to a
trailing
point,
average.
puts you in a real interesting situation, especially if the prices don't go back down or they don't flatten out between now and the end of the month.
Yeah, for the most part, would this be correct in saying this? And then we'll jump on to the multifamily, why they buy an industrial. I've always had the belief that big retail yards make their money in down markets, not in up markets.
Mm-hmm.
Because in a normalized, if that's even a term, volatile market that trends up and trends down, trends up, trends down, when they used to do those 90-day locks, they'd take business, they'd buy a third, have a third in transit that they'd buy during the process and hold a third short, right? And when that thing turned over, they made their money. Kind of hard to do that now with this volatility, right? So that's why you saw all this kerfuffle and changes in the way
Fluffle.
people price their contracts and all that, right? Because
Yep.
they wanted to shrink that time that they were at risk and still get business, right? Then you get onto a multifamily person. They have a big budget. They go through the developer that then has a general contractor that then goes to a jobber that was probably sold by a wholesaler that probably bought it from a mill. Think about that. 5 touches potentially for a multifamily job. So if you're at the end of that chain and you're just literally finding out now as the developer that lumber prices are up. Hell, I was at a Christmas party on Saturday and a bunch of people said, "Hey, I heard lumber prices have fallen." So think about that, right? There are still people at that end of the chain that are just waking up right now, realizing that they're going back to their developer, their framer, their contractor, their wholesaler, and everything else, and that's got to pass all the way back through that again, right? So now they're trying to figure out how they're going to get these budgets locked in. So that's why there's still probably some buying to go on when you get up in these crazy levels, right?
There has to be, because it's
Right.
cheaper to buy it than it is to have a bunch of guys standing around or somebody reallocating labor to another job that actually has fiber, and then you're behind schedule.
And
And
my
then
guess
that liquid. Go ahead.
my guess would be a lot of these smart people that sell these jobs and have done it for 10, 15, 20 years and watch the market now see these jobs that are getting specced out for late first quarter, second quarter, and are probably taking the business and not covering it, is my guess. They're basically taking it short
Yep.
at these extreme numbers, right? So, not all of them, but if you look at the futures at such a premium, you can't really lock in any risk management or forward pricing. It's too high of a price. Secondly, the other interesting thing going on in the market is, you and I talked about it. There's about 7 really big influencers in the market that are probably long futures and other things. And They like putting out information that the thing's never going down, right? So you have to be aware always. I always say this, you know, you got to be aware of who's delivering you the message, and you have to ask the person delivering the messages, are you long? Or is there a reason why, or when is it going down? When do you think it'll go down? Or give me the reasons why, or why do you think it'll keep going up? I can see the argument for both. I don't ever have a position on, so it really doesn't matter. It doesn't, I think I can come from a standpoint and talk about it from both sides, right? I mean,
You're
I'm
a
a little,
neutral source of information, and that, you know, in this right now, as crazy as things are, it's a huge conundrum of push and pull from both sides
it is.
because everything's so drastic.
Yeah,
There's no historical or, you know, seasonality of $15, $20, $30, $40 price jumps in, you know, 3 weeks, right? I mean,
yeah,
I feel like that's over with for the first time in a very, very long time. I mean, producers hold the cards. You talk to anybody that's a producer in the Southeast in Southern Yellow Pine, they're not quoting out past the week of 12/20. And the majority of that was sold before 11 o'clock this morning, if you could even get availability or get somebody to give you a number. So cards
absolutely.
being played close to the chest is an understatement.
Right. Right. And look at, hey, when I was a wholesale distributor and did forward pricing and I was long, I was out there screaming from the rooftops how the price was never going down because I had a position on, right? Why would I say something different, right? And then when I got short, I screamed about how the price was going down. And I was wrong a lot of times too, but I would still preach that message, right? So I think the important thing is go gather as much information as you can. Don't just come to our show, but come to it and listen to it. Ask people, start lining up the pros and the cons. And what price a lot of times comes down to is where is the wood in the pipeline and how is it flowing, right?
Well, I
I
think
think, yeah,
more than anything, though, now it's when do you need it. It doesn't matter where it is in the pipeline because there's plenty of fiber sitting in reloads, plenty of fiber that people have spec bought. That the timeline as to when it is put into action is really the determining factor of whether you should buy or not. If you're talking within the next 30 days or, you know, say the end of January and you haven't bought yet, there's some pretty substantial risk you may or may not get it, or you're paying a huge premium for it. If you're talking
absolutely.
about covering 45, 50 days out, there's got to be, with as straight as that line went up, it's got to give. There's got to be somewhere where somebody throws their hands up and says, okay, enough's enough.
Yeah, it's certainly
DC's actually going to cut wood again at some point.
yeah, well, it's true. It certainly makes it interesting to be in the business. So, tell us a little bit about what's going on with you. What are you seeing down in that southeast market? What are you seeing on multifamily, industrial, pine? You got your new line in. Tell us a little bit about that.
I mean, Southern Yellow Pine studs are still a heck of an opportunity for, you know, trade species against species as far as SPF, whether it's Euro or Canadian, and institute some sort of cost savings. 2 to 6 104s obviously are still the shining star in that arbitrage opportunity, but you know, 2 to 4s once again in Southern Yellow Pine stayed strong, and there's not really an opportunity to trade it against a 2 to 4 104 in Euro or Canadian. But you know, the biggest thing is how quickly all the wides. I mean, everything just disappeared in Southern Yellow Pine. I mean, I'm 7-10 days gone.
Yeah,
And
well,
it was
the wides were a great opportunity, right? That's one of the things where you can actually buy those things, put them on the ground. You're basically putting them in the freezer for the winter, right? Because people were just buying cheap fiber.
yep,
Yeah, and the treater stepped in too, which that's one of the reasons 2x6 disappeared, right?
yep. One of
That's
the
cool. So
biggest reasons,
yeah, it's a big,
actually.
and they just literally stepped in. Now, one thing I heard interesting is a lot of people said, "Hey, I heard this rumor how the home centers are going to come in and buy in middle December, really big." I'm like, you know what? They have planned what they're going to do all the time. I don't think there's any. I mean, you don't maybe see it as much, but if they have good outtake, they buy lumber. If they have less outtake, they buy less lumber. So it will be interesting to see, and I'll have to go out to my people in the know and find out more about what the home centers are doing because I haven't heard much on that lately. What they're up to. But again, everybody's kind of snuck back in the weeds after our last move, but it's time to start bringing out the people that we know to find out what they're seeing out there.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I mean, I think the once again the sheer trajectory and I, it almost makes it difficult to do your job, honestly, because you don't know what's on the other side, and it's not small, whatever it is.
It's hard.
So
It's really hard if you think about it. I mean, my gosh, and again, we're at that point now of credit risk, right? In credit,
Yep.
because a carload of studs now is over $100,000, right? A truckload of pine is, $20,000. That's put stresses everywhere. I had a guy, I gave him an update on a Friday night on a load. I said, hey, this load probably won't ship for a week. Monday morning at 6 in the morning, I'm getting an email. Where's this load? I'm like, you try to be as I'm like, hey, nothing's really changed since Friday night when I sent this email at 5 o'clock at night. But I'm working my best for you, and we're seeing that across the system right now. It's the shipping is stressed, right?
Extremely, extremely.
So you got that fourth line in and running now.
Yeah. Well, the fourth line will be here in 2 weeks. Third line came in. It's a 5 head about a week and a half ago, and we worked out all the kinks, and it's running pretty well. But time will tell. Something else will break, and we'll have to figure it out. And, it's just a process.
Well, cool. So look at, I mean, I think everybody listening to this, whether you're retail, industrial, or multifamily, Charles is really good as far as chatting with you about, and he's shipped a lot of people I know 2x6, 104 and 5/8 pine. And one of the things I know we always laugh about, everybody that tells us that they can't use pine on a job site, literally we're shipping pine to job sites that are doing the same thing right next to them.
Yep.
And I think that the tolerances, the production on pine now, uh, and you also do the spruce studs, but the pine product that you're shipping out, my feedback is it's a beautiful product, man. Great looking product. So I just want to say, if you want to contact Charles, there's his email down there below. If you want to get involved with some of that outtake out of his plant, that may be a great thing. Otherwise, I'm going to probably slink off to my vacation and go check out Mount Bachelor and maybe a couple other places around here. Um, Even though I'm married, I'm going to go to Mount Bachelor with my wife. It's kind of an oxymoron, isn't it? A little bit,
A little
but
bit.
should be fun. So we'll
We'll
look forward to
enjoy it.
doing. Yeah, thanks, Charles. And we'll look forward to doing this again next week. And tomorrow, make sure Tuesday, Mike Wisniewski with and Greg Kuda do their futures from the free seats. Great to see what's going on in the futures market. And Wednesday, Greg Riley, Matt Beamer, and myself do a show Thursday. I do a show at Matt Lehman at noon. So looking forward to seeing you guys this week. And hope all is well. And come to mxlumber.com and you can see the 100 trucks that we've got listed to buy and to sell. So talk to you soon.
Sounds good. Thanks,
All
Al.
right. Thanks, Charles.